now we're on to another category of folks that we have to help, which is assisting folks who are currently receiving UMAP assistance. And you know, right now, there's thousands of people who are getting hardest hit assistance, who are getting that monthly mortgage assistance. So the first step involved here is, this is very important to know. You, as an advisor, must continue to do your monthly touch just like you have been doing until you receive notice from Florida Housing that this applicant's modified hardest hit loan document is ready to be printed off. Okay? As soon as that happens, well, let's say as soon as that happens, then you're going to print off those loan documents, have them come in and sign, and on the date when they sign, you're going to complete your first quarterly touch. Even if you did your monthly touch 2 weeks ago, and now you're having them come in your office and sign, you're going to start your process of creating a monthly touch. And the good news is you'll get paid for that. 2 weeks, you get paid good money for doing that work. Recognize that Florida Housing is the one that identifies which UMAPers, as I call them, which folks who are currently getting UMAP have past due amounts on their first mortgage. It's not your responsibility. You don't have to collect any, new monthly mortgage statement. It's not an absolute requirement that you do that because Florida Housing has that information as they're working with a servicer. And so they're going to be the ones who identify who's going to get some MLRP assistance. Because recognize, as soon as that modified loan is signed, shortly after that, they're going to receive their MLRP up front. That's going to be thrilling for people to hear about. And so then you print out your loan documents, you get them signed, you complete a quarterly touch. Those are the steps in that order for helping UMAP recipients. And that's pretty straightforward. There's not all that much attention you have to place on those folks who are currently receiving UMAP. Oh, I guess there's a fourth step. Okay, there's a fourth step. Yeah, so you complete another quarterly touch every next 3 months. So you're always asking yourself, hey, Ms. Smith, when did we do the reclosing? When did she sign the modified hardest hit loan? Oh, that was on April 15th or whatever. And you're always counting off from that date. 3 months later, that's when the next quarterly touch is due. That's extremely important for the advisor to keep track of, and also for your homeowner to keep track of. Because remember, they cannot miss any of their quarterly touches, or they'll be terminated from the program. We need to know regularly, every 3 months, that they're still eligible for assistance. Question? Okay, so the question is, after the 3 months, how much time do you have to do the quarterly touch? By the time, okay, so look at the date when the modified documents were signed, and then count off 3 months into the future. That is your due date. So your homeowner needs to know that's the due date. So we should probably meet a week or two before that date, okay? Because that's your cutoff date right there. Question here? Oh, so there's no, now with this system, first of all, let's go back to step one, that until you hear from Florida Housing that the modified documents are ready to print, you need to keep on with your regular process of doing a monthly touch. But as soon as the applicant signs that modified loan document, you now switch to a quarterly touch system. So there no longer is any every month turn in your new documents. No. Now, 3 months from now, a week or two before that 3 months comes, that deadline comes along, you need to get updated information to prove they're eligible, and that updated information will only be for the last 30 days. But we're now moving to a system where only once every 3 months do we have to check somebody's availability. The question was asked about, what if the modified documents were signed on April 9th? 3 months later is going to be June 9th, April, May, June, July 9th, July 9th. And so it begs the question, well, under the current system or under the system that we have been using up until now, we had until the 20th of every month to turn in that touch document. But now, technically, no, it could be if you sign that document on the 9th, then 3 months later on the 9th is when your due date is. Nicole was mentioning there may be some flexibility of maybe, even to the end of that month when the touch is due, you could get it in. But for the most part, you need to get your applicants thoroughly prepared to meet their deadline of every 3 months, no matter what day of the month that falls on. Okay? Here's a question. It's an important something because, under the monthly touch system, if we heard that they were now re-employed, we're learning about it early on, and there's no way that 60 days could have come and gone. And remember, the rule is if you're re-employed, you can continue to receive UMAP until you've been reemployed for 60 days, and that's when you would fall off the UMAP program. That's when you'd be no longer eligible for any more monthly assistance. But now, under the quarterly touch system, we may very well have a person come, we've done their first quarterly touch, 3 months goes by, they come back in our office, and they say, I've been reemployed for 2.5 months now. And in a case like that, they would be able to provide us with the 60 days of pay stubs from their new job, which we'd be able to say, congratulations, you're reemployed. You're no longer eligible for any more UMAP assistance, and you've already received your MLRP assistance up front, so that's the end for you. So we may, and let's recognize there may also be another scenario. We do one quarterly touch, now comes 3 months later, and we're doing another quarterly touch, and the person says, last week I got a new job. Well, it hasn't been 60 days since they've gotten the new job, so we'll say, okay, you're going to get a little bit more UMAP assistance. As soon as I can collect 60 days of pay stubs from you, you will no longer be able to receive UMAP assistance. But either way, nothing has changed about the fact that you need to collect 60 days of pay stubs from a new job. You need to provide that by email to Nicole and Laney, and that is the way that you notify them that a person has recovered from their hardship and is no longer eligible for any more UMAP assistance. That has not changed. All right, so let's see. So that's all I have to say about helping current UMAP recipients. Let's go on to the next type of applicant. How about assisting new applicants? And I want to recognize that really the system for helping new applicants hasn't really changed, hardly at all. When I thought about it, really here's all that I could think of that's changed. Okay, so remember there's been changes to the eligibility criteria. Duh, you're looking through the eligibility checklist, you're going to see 4 fewer eligibility criteria on there. Now, because there is no longer a CLTV hardship test, you don't have to collect documentation of property value. That's the only reason we were collecting that, okay? You also don't have to document the total amount of loans that are on that property. That's something we also were doing because of the CLTV test. And finally, this is kind of random, but you don't have to document who is the investor on the mortgage. Remember back we had been documenting, this is a Fannie loan, and this is a Freddie loan, and this is a different type of loan. We don't have to do that anymore. Just so you know, the reason that's no longer required, it's been over a year now that the Hardest Hit program has been implemented statewide. Early on, we wanted to know who the investor was on the mortgage because Hardest Hit was still very actively recruiting new servicers to participate in the program. Well, you could just about imagine it's been well over a year that they've been recruiting servicers to participate in this program, and they kind of know who's out there now. Let's talk about, when we're talking about new applicants, some of them are underemployed, okay? So for some of them, we need to document, are you significantly underemployed? The whole question about at least 10% reduction of income. I want to show you something about that. So the first thing is that, and this hasn't changed, just like in the past, underemployed applicants have to provide at least 2 years of tax returns. I guess we already talked about that when we were just talking about underemployed folks. You need to document their prior income with at least 2 years of tax returns or 2 years of W-2 statements. That's the most important part of the tax return that we're looking at. But I also want to point out, look at this screenshot of the initial application that the hardest hit applicant is filling out. There is a financial worksheet on that application, and there's now a new box on that financial worksheet. You can see it's got this red arrow that's pointing at it here. That is the pre-hardship income. That's what it's called, pre-hardship income. Well, that's great. Now that we have a box to type in the pre-hardship income, we can now compare it with the current situation, and so we can compare whether the income has reduced significantly enough that we can say that this is a qualifying underemployment hardship. Let's also recognize that, have you noticed with any of your applicants that they just don't fill this part of the application out correctly? I mean, there's a lot of folks that, that's one of the reasons why it's so critical that advisors are a part of this program. We've got to look at what their pay stubs say and all their other sources of income that they're reporting to us. And then we have to look back at the application to see if it reflects the proper information. We have to make sure that they calculated those numbers that they typed in there correctly before this goes up to Florida Housing. I'll say it now, even though I'm going to say it later on. Anything that is not correct on the application is technically, I don't like to think of it this way, is technically fraud. Okay, so an advisor's job is to go back and look at that application to make sure that they answered all the questions correctly based on the interview that you're doing with them. And as you probably have already seen in the past, some applicants, I don't think that they're trying to commit fraud, but they just don't fill these, especially the financial boxes out correctly initially, and we got to go back and fix them. And when it comes to exporting a new case, a new applicant's case, there's not that much that's changed there. But I do want to point out one thing. Now, after the advisor exports a case, remember it's always you would only export what you believe is an eligible case. Now the Florida Housing's underwriter looks at it and let's say they agree with you, yes, this person is eligible, then that gets sent on to the servicer. Now, the servicer is going to ask 2 questions initially. They're going to say, is this person eligible for UMAP? And will we accept MLRP for this applicant? They're going to ask both of those questions up front because MLRP will be provided up front if the person is deemed eligible. Okay? So that's kind of a small change to the process. Well, now we've got 3 or 4 different types of applicants that we've talked about. Let's talk about yet another type of applicant that we're helping. And that would be somebody who has got that status HHF funded closed. This is somebody that has previously received assistance. Maybe they're eligible for more assistance. Now, forgive me, as we go through from here on out in the morning presentation, these steps are going to look real familiar, right? Because it's important that we talk about each type of applicant in turn. There's occasionally something I got to tell you that's specific to the applicants, but like step 1, request updated documents. Well, you've heard me say that before, right? This applies to a lot of folks. So you've got to get updated documents for these folks. I say updated because remember, if they received hardest hit in the past, they've already given you some documents to begin with. Now we need to know what's their current situation. Step 2, and this is important, does the homeowner pass all the eligibility criteria? You've got to look comprehensively through that eligibility checklist to make sure they really pass everything before they go on to, before you go on to export their case. Now, here's an applicant who has a question. It must be related to what I was just talking about. Yes, ma'am. Since receiving HHF assistance, I have started the legal foreclosure process. Can I still receive more assistance now? She started the legal foreclosure process. What do y'all think? Yeah, I guess I've already said it this morning. Yes, you sure can. The servicer ultimately makes the decision about whether they want to continue with the legal foreclosure process and not accept hardest hit, or if they want to stop the legal foreclosure process right now during the period of time when hardest hit assistance is received. So there's nothing that's changed here, but I just kind of wanted to remind you, there are several applicants who are eligible and who are receiving assistance who, when they first applied, had started the legal foreclosure process because their first mortgage lender had started that process. So that's cool. We can help them. Okay, so how about more about helping these folks who are HHF funded closed? The next step in line is you have to ask a question. Is this person eligible for UMAP and MLRP, or only for MLRP? So what I'm getting at with this step number 3, some folks who are HHF funded closed, not everyone, but some of these folks have recovered from their hardship. Some of these folks can afford their monthly mortgage payment. And if that's the case, then they're not going to get any UMAP assistance. But they will be eligible for MLRP. And as we've talked about before, $18,000, that's a good amount of assistance. So this step is an important one. Even before you export this up to Florida Housing, you got to have it straight in your mind. Not every one of these types of applicants is the same. Step number 4, okay. If you've determined this person is eligible, they pass every single item on that eligibility checklist, now it's time to export this up to Florida Housing to see if they agree with you about eligibility. And step number 5, if they do, in fact, agree with you, then the underwriter will tell you, okay, print out the loan documents. This would be a modified loan document because we're talking about people who had in the past received HHF assistance. So they've already signed one loan. Now they have to receive a modified loan and sign that. Okay. So hang in there with me. We're actually doing very well with time. We certainly have time for questions. I don't want to railroad over any questions. If you've got them, let me know. Oh, you do have a question. Okay. Well, this is a good question. Let's tackle this. The question is about, for those folks, so remember, we're still talking about HHF-funded closed folks. Remember, these folks were happy to get the hardest hit assistance when they could, but several of them kind of maxed out in the assistance that was available to them. So here they are. They still have a problem. They're still trying to work out a solution. Maybe the very next thing that they do is they try to get into a loan modification agreement with the first mortgage provider. And when they do that, you're absolutely right to ask this question. You probably know this. We cannot help a homeowner when they're in a trial period for a loan modification, okay? But that trial period is time limited, and then, what's that? So we could help somebody in a trial period for a different type of modification.
Okay, remember that's only for HAMP only. That we can't do make HHF payments on trial mods. If it was an in-house proprietary modification, or if it's a servicer that's not participating in HAMP, we can, it's up to the servicer to decide if they're going to take the HHF or not. That really is just for HAMP modifications.
That's very helpful. And so, so don't let that to be a deterrent. Even if the person was in a HAMP trial modification period, you could wait until the end of the trial, and if that new monthly payment is still an amount that is, technically unaffordable to them, it's more than 31% of their income, that's a candidate for UMAP assistance. Great. Yeah, we don't have to let that be a deterrent to us. Oh, is there another question here? Well, HAMP is the homeowner. I actually can't remember what it stands for. Homeowner Assistance Modification Program, and it is a national program that's been available even before Hardest Hit came along. that can help people modify their mortgage so that it's a more affordable monthly payment. And so that's why we talk about this trial period when a person is trying it out to see if it's going to work for them. But like I said before, that trial period only lasts a certain number of months, and then it's like, okay, you've passed your trial, now here's your lower monthly payment, continue to pay this in the future. We can help people like that. Yeah. And so now we come to talking about those who in the past had received MLRP, but they sure could use more. They still have more that's past due. Okay? Now, step number 1 is something the advisor is not responsible for. For this type of applicant, once again, we see that Florida Housing starts off the process by identifying a list of cases for your agency where they received MLRP assistance, but it didn't fully cover all of the past due amounts. Of course, Florida Housing knows about this because they're working hand in hand with the servicers, so they ask the servicers, who in turn tell them, oh yeah, Mr. Jones, Ms. Brown, all these folks are people who still have past due amounts even after receiving $6,000 of MLRP. So you don't have to identify those folks. You get a list from Florida Housing, and now you start to make some contacts. And each time you contact one of these homeowners, you say, hey, I think you might be able to get some more MLRP assistance. That amount has tripled. All I have to do is check to make sure you're still eligible. So step number 2, you're collecting updated documents to prove whether or not they're eligible. Now, question number 3, you have to ask the question, do they pass or fail the 31% test? Because we need to know if the person is eligible for UMAP and MLRP or only MLRP, right? Again, this is very similar to what we were just talking about in one of the previous slides here, but that's a critical step. We need to know exactly what type of hardest hit assistance they're eligible for, and once you've gotten to step number 4, once you've exported this case up to the underwriter, you'll receive the $150 for doing that. So we're starting to see some real similarities in the way that you're dealing with these applicants and moving forward. Let's see if there's somebody here. Oh, okay. What about assisting those who had recovered from a hardship, but they've got a new hardship? Now, nothing has changed when it comes to these folks. It has always been the case, and I hope you know this, it's always been the case that a person can come back for more hit assistance so long as they haven't maxed out on the number of months when they can receive assistance, and they haven't maxed out on the total amount of money that they're eligible for under UMAP. And so no change here, but just remember that. There are folks who currently have the status HHF funded closed who might be able to have that status changed to HHF funded. They may be able to get some more assistance. So I don't know if I didn't really actually put any more bullet points on there. If somebody says, hey, I've got a new hardship, then what are you going to do? You're going to collect updated documents to prove that they're eligible, and you'll export that case up to Florida Housing. So it follows very much the predictable pattern of steps that we've been talking about so far. And I believe this is the last type of applicant that we need to talk about this morning. And it's dealing with those who are canceled clients. So I'll address the first couple of bullet points on this slide first. There's 2 types of canceled clients. There's those who are canceled directly by the client. They call us up, they email us, they say, I want you to cancel my case. And then there's some, probably a majority of canceled clients are canceled because they have been inactive. For more than 30 days, they have not responded to our calls. They've not provided us the documents that we need. And after 30 days, we get to say enough is enough, and we're cutting you off. I should mention that always, when you have a canceled client and you're sending, you wouldn't send them an ineligible letter, you'd send them a cancellation letter. And it's always probably helpful to maybe put a little handwritten Post-it note on that letter saying, listen, we're canceling you now, but if you want to send us the documents that we requested. We will jumpstart your case. We'll restart it again. So, we're not saying goodbye forever. We're just saying you should have sent us those documents. So that's always important to know. That has nothing to do with the hardest hit changes. Just that should always be your attitude with canceled clients. Now, when I'm talking about canceled clients, even before I tell you how to address them, let's look at the bottom part of the slide, because I don't want you to get canceled clients mixed up with terminated clients. Clients who are terminated are ones who had been receiving hardest hit assistance, but then they missed 2 monthly touches and they get terminated, or they missed providing a partial payment, right? They didn't provide their partial payment. The 20th of the month comes and goes. They still haven't provided their partial payment, and that will terminate somebody from the program. To be clear, terminated clients don't get another chance. There's no reason for you to put any attention on reevaluating terminated clients. They had their chance and they're done. But canceled clients are a different matter. And so for canceled clients, very much like we've talked about before, you're going to request updated documents from them, and see my little joke, very little joke, in parentheses here, or you may be requesting all documents from them, right? For some canceled clients, they never provided you any documents in the first place, so you need to get the documents that you need from them. You need to go down that document checklist, check the things you had already gotten from them, and get updated income and asset information for them. Step number 2, you have to make sure that this applicant passes all the eligibility tests, and it's only then that you get to step number 3, where you're exporting. Remember, you need to export all of the documents for a canceled client. The reason I emphasize all, an underwriter has never seen this case before. For a canceled client, they've never before been exported. So you need to send all of the documents so that the underwriter can holistically determine whether this person is eligible or not. Any questions about that? Canceled clients? New clients? Any of that? I'm pretty sure. Okay, so that's the last slide for this morning. So I'm going to entertain some more questions before we get out of here. Yeah, Debbie. Yeah, okay. So there's a couple things. I'm glad you mentioned that, Debbie. So the question was about a canceled client. We sent them a cancellation letter. And the first thing, a little lesson I guess I hadn't made clear before, I mentioned that from here on out, when somebody's deemed ineligible, you get paid $50. If somebody's deemed canceled, you also get $50. But then building on top of that, Debbie is wondering, okay, well, if we've sent out that cancellation letter and a couple months later they come back to you and they want to continue along with the process, maybe they continue the process in a marvelous way and it turns out, whoa, they're eligible. So when we export that case, and when Florida Housing agrees with us that this person is eligible, it begs the question. For an eligible case, we get paid $300, and Nicole was just mentioning, okay, you already got paid $50, you'll get paid the difference. You'll get paid $250 now. That's a good question. Yes? I'm going to repeat the question before you answer it. We've seen some significant changes to the program. Does Florida Housing have any estimates of how long the existing money will last? Don't worry, whoever's doing that drill is going to come right through this wall in a minute. We'll see who it is, and we'll be able to tell them to be quiet. So, what do you think? How long is it going to take to go through the rest of the money?
Well, the funds are good, as everybody knows, until 2017. Have I done specific projections taking the people that were ineligible that now should be eligible and using the No, I have not been able to do that yet. We have $1 billion. So that's a lot of funds to be able to use with these changes for right now. I think to answer the question better, I think we need to get some months under our belt too to see how many people move from the ineligible numbers to the eligible numbers, see what kind of pull-through rate we're getting from those first before I can even do some kind of detailed projections on when will the money run out, if it runs out. Do you have anything?
Yeah, the new clients, I mean, how many?
Right, and as David was saying, we don't know how many new clients this is going to attract with the outreach you're doing, whatever kind of media press we get too. So there's a lot of balls in the air that we just have a lot of unknowns about on how to run those numbers.
But generally, we're not worried about it running out very quickly.
Right. I don't think we've tapped out even a $250 million yet, right? Okay. And I don't think that there's any counties that are at risk of, running out of their allocation of money yet, right? Or is there?
No, we just went to the board and asked for an increase in our allocation that I can do that, add funds to the counties as needed. So the if anybody knows how we do this, the tier 3 counties I'll pull from a pool. So basically I needed to allocate more to some of the tier 3 counties. So.
And that's very helpful to mention here, because here we are in North Florida. We have several tier 3 communities here, a lot of panhandle communities. So great, there's funds even for the tier 3 communities.
Right now it should be seamless to you. You guys shouldn't know that. It's stuff behind the scenes that I'll just go and allocate as I see fit.
And that's the second part of your question, Michael. You may get requests to participate in foreclosure events, mortgage events by legislators, and that's on the congressional level as well as state level and local level. Send those to us as soon as you get them, because we need to let our legislative office know, and so that we can have all information ready. You can have everything that you need, so that it goes very smoothly.
Good. Michael, what about your question? I counted 81 agencies when I was looking at all the folks who had attended these workshops and such. So we've got a couple fewer agencies than we used to have, and all of those cases that they had been working on have very responsibly been handed off to additional agencies now. So in that way, it's seamless too, and nobody slipped through the cracks. Yeah.
Because that office decided to do statewide. I mean, that arrangements is between you and that office on how to do it. It's up to the advisor agency to make the closing seamless for the client. So they're the ones that need to go and do all that stuff. We encourage you to work across other agencies in the area. If it's not local to you, reach out to another agency. Michael does that all the time, gives out that information. But that's an arrangement you need to work out with the advisor agency. Yeah. No, it's a way to make sure that we have capacity across the state.
Exactly, yeah. And the Counselor Direct system is set up so that all the agencies who've said that they'll, for example, help people in Tampa, each, kind of in turn get an equal number of applicants based on their capacities. So the system is continuing to work, and I think Florida Housing has done a very good job of making sure that the entire state is covered by multiple agencies handling each county, and that system seems to be working. Yeah.
You may get requests from applicants saying that they're in Orlando, you're in West Palm Beach, and they want to change advisors because they want somebody closer to them. We are not in the practice of doing that. However, if there is some extenuating circumstance, like some sort of physical disability or mental incapacity or something like that, if you will contact us, in those cases we may reassign, because there are agencies across the state that are better equipped to handle people with disabilities, and so we will make those reassignments. So we just encourage you to encourage them and let them know that you're more than capable of handling their information, and that you will arrange their closing in their area so that they don't have to come to you to close.